We've been hearing over the past few days about the shocking situation continuing to unfold in America as protests and riots rage following the horrific death of 46-year-old George Floyd, who was killed after a police officer kneeled on his neck and as he gasped for air and said, "I can't breathe." Today, Hollywood stars Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively have donated $200,000 to a legal fund fighting for racial justice. In an emotional joint post on Instagram, they said, "We never had to worry about preparing our kids for different rules of law or what might happen if they're pulled over in the car. We don't know what it's like to experience that life day in and day out. We can't imagine feeling that kind of fear and anger." So what do we think? Can those who have never had to grow up with racism ever truly understand it? And Judi, I'd like to ask what you think about Ryan Reynolds' post, first of all.
I think it's good that people who are not Black are able to have some empathy and show their support, whether you're a celebrity or not. I think that is really important, that people come together and collectively stamp down on institutional racism and police brutality within the Black community is so needed. Whether someone who is not Black can understand, personally, I don't think they can. I think they can empathise. I think they have their own possibility of issues regards to discrimination, but actually stepping outside of your home, within the skin, the colour of your skin, and which cannot be changed, which doesn't want to be changed for me anyway, and being judged and stereotyped and possibly can lose your life and have lost their lives because of that. I don't think someone else, unless they've lived in that walk, can understand that. And the issue is as well, it's like, we're dealing with all of this tension in regards to seeing so many Black men and Black women and young Black boys losing their life to police brutality, but we're dealing with racism every day. There's always a situation for a Black person. I can personally say that whether it's in the workplace, whether it's going to a shop, whether it's being stopped by the police, that we're dealing with these things every day. The education system, the mental health system, the policing and prison system, and having all of that on your mind, plus seeing these videos of Black men and Black women dying, it's just it's real trauma. It's proper psychological trauma.
Judi, it's so difficult for us three white women sitting on the panel to navigate through this crisis, and basically, as you've just said, that we can't possibly know what it's like to live in your skin, literally and metaphorically. But just give us a little taste of what it has been like to grow up as a Black woman. When you say that, you know, from an early age you get stopped on the street, something that we just cannot possibly understand. We hear about it, but we don't ever know what it's like to be in fear of our lives and our freedom just by stepping out of the front door. How has that impacted on you from childhood?
I remember my first time being racially abused. I was about maybe 7 years old, and I was tying up my mum's shoelace on a high road, sunny summer's day, and someone shouted out, "Yeah, you do that," and they used the N-word. And then growing up, there's situations of not getting certain positions, knowing that you're more qualified than the other people that has applied for the job, especially if you're within the position already in that workplace. Seeing the police, I have my license, I have my insurance, everything. Seeing the police and driving and seeing the police behind you, and just for that minute feeling nervous, even though you are fully legit, is something that I feel a lot of Black people go through. And as a Black parent as well, having to have that conversation with my son at 7 years old and explaining to him, you're a young Black boy and you might be put in a situation where you are judged just solely on the base of your skin, is heartbreaking, because you see your young child's eyes change, this child who has got friends from so many different backgrounds and now have to take this on. So I feel like every day there's different circumstances, and having a platform like this where, yes, there's 3 white women on the panel, but you're willing to have this conversation is something that is so needed. And I'm grateful for it, that I can share my story. I've been stopped by the police before. And when I was stopped by the police, I was wearing a hoodie and I was driving a car. But by the time they stopped me, they could see, you know, I was a woman, I got a child, a seat in the back, and I was, you know, what's wrong, officer? And they were just walking around my car. And I genuinely felt it was just walking around to find an issue. They said something about my tyres. I said, okay, I can get someone to change it. I called my friend down. They were like, no, you can't move the car, you can't do anything, and you're going to get a fine. And at that time, I was finishing my master's. And I didn't really understand that system. And that's something that we need to know, our laws, yeah? And at that time, all I heard was, you're going to get a fine. So I just thought, I'm going to get points. I'm going to get a criminal record. And I've explained to them, listen, I've just done my master's. And the area that I've studied, if I get a criminal record, I can't work. And I was pleading, I was crying, because it's by the officer's discretion whether you need to get fined or, you know, get arrested. And it was just like, I don't really, that's not my issue. Right? This is how it is. And I just remember sobbing and feeling to myself like, is this because I'm a black woman? And don't get me wrong, I know police officers that are not black and they're not racist, but there is a real issue, institutional racism that is happening in the UK and in the USA, and people are coming together. And I think what people need to understand is that you might be a white person, you might be an Asian person, you might feel like, oh, this whole Black Lives Matter is not an issue for you. But your son, your daughter might grow up and end up having a relationship with a black man or a black woman. Your grandchildren might be mixed race, dual heritage. And when someone who is racist sees them, they're not going to think, oh, you know, they're mixed race, they're dual heritage, we shouldn't pick on them. They're just going to see the colour of their skin is brown, and that's going to be enough for them to project their racism on them.
I think that the thing that really struck me about this, because obviously there's a lot of stuff going around on social media, there's quotes from people. I mean, Will Smith did that great quote about, you know, you're not seeing racism for the first time, it's being filmed kind of thing, or racism is still there.
It's not getting worse, it's getting
filmed. Getting worse, it's being filmed. But there's a US author called Scott Woods, and I think this particularly applies to me. He said, the problem is that white people see racism as conscious hate. And that's what I've always thought. I've thought, well, I'm not racist and I would never consciously be racist. And I've always brought my children up to not be racist. But he says racism is actually bigger than people thinking it's just conscious hate. He says it's a complex system of social and political levers and pulleys set up generations ago to continue working on behalf of whites at other people's expense, whether whites know, like it or not. And I think that's exactly what you've just described. And that quote really hit home to me.
Sorry, I just didn't hear that last bit that you said.
I was just saying it's what you've just described, really. That is why that comment really hit home to me, is that it's about being born into a situation where that unconscious racism perhaps is also there.
Yeah, and it is about that, and it is about people, whether you feel like you're affected or you are, and you've got a chance to stand out and say something. If you see someone, whether it's a family member, whether it's a work colleague, and you know it, you feel it inside your heart, you feel uncomfortable about what you've witnessed, say something, stand together. It's not just losing jobs, it's not just being housed, it's people dying.
Yeah.